Hello, welcome to Around the World with Dane Waters. I'm your host, Dane Waters. One of these days I'm going to kind of just break it up, say Around the World with Dane Waters, and I'm your host. I don't know, Ben Stiller. I don't know. I'm just going to kind of see if anyone's actually listening. I think I'll do that one day. So what's going on around the world? I say this. I literally say this every week when I look at these clips. There's so much going on. Well, the world is just a crazy place, and which we'll talk about in our segment here in a minute. But a couple of highlights. Of course, outside of the earthquake in Myanmar and Thailand, which I hate to say it, but in my year in review or my prognostications, I said there's going to be a major earthquake in the Pacific Rim. So I don't know if that qualifies or not. 7.7 is pretty serious. But as a guy who loves elephants, I will tell you that the elephants are safe and sound. Sadly, many human beings are not. So. They're still in the process. And I'll talk to my first guest about that with Keith Coleman about kind of emergency preparedness and the need for power and energy, as he likes to say, energy. On top of that, Marie Le Pen, and talk about something that's earthquake and earth shattering, is that she was the odds-on favorite to be the next president of France. Now, according to a court ruling, claiming that she and some cohorts of her embezzled millions of dollars for their political party, she's been banned for running for office. Now, I don't know what that says and what's going to happen. I mean, she will appeal it, but that is really an earthquake of magnitude greater than 7.7 in France. We'll have to see what's going on with that and talk about that. I think it's going to be in a show next week. We'll talk about Donald Trump, which we'll talk about again in our show. What's going on with him tomorrow? I can't remember exactly what he calls it, but tomorrow he's going to be releasing all these tariffs that he's doing around the world. We'll have to see what the impact of that is. And also he teased about the possibility of serving for a third term. Well, anybody who knows American Constitution, it's unconstitutional to run for a third term, but he says there are creative ways to do that. Who knows? What else do we want to talk about here? I think that's all we want to talk about for this part, because we have a segment with two great gentlemen to talk about what's going on around the world with the impact of USAID and the cuts, budget cuts by Trump, and also some stuff about Nigeria. But let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with our first guest. Thank you very much.
Your votes will get stolen if you can vote there at all.
Welcome back to Around the World with Dane Waters, and I'm your host, Ben Stiller. No, I'm just checking to see if anyone's been listening. So let's get started here. We have our first guest, Keith Coleman, the president of Mid-America. Is it American or America? Mid-America?
Mid-America. Yep.
Mid-America. Keith's been on the show before, and I was corrected, and I won't say it wrong this time. We were talking about power, but he says it's about energy. So I will not make that mistake again. So Keith, thanks for being on the show. And I know it's 3 a.m. where you are, and I really appreciate you getting up to do the show. So how are you?
I'm doing well, Dane. It's 3 a.m. in the morning where I'm at, but I'm doing well. Always happy to be here with you, my friend.
It's interesting about time zones. I'm in the Philippines, and it's, what time is it here? It's 4 p.m. on Tuesday. And for you, it's 3 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. And in Nigeria, where the show is, it's 9 a.m. on Tuesday. I mean, time zones, it just points out how huge and large this country is. So let's get chatting here.
Last time we did this, I was in Dubai.
I know. See, that's why it's called Around the World, because the guests are everywhere in the world, and that's how we get a good overview about what's happening. But so let's talk real quick about power, and there's all types of power, not just the power that comes from energy lines and solar. But last time we were talking, I think we were talking before all the USAID cuts, and now they've happened. So what I want the audience to understand, because in America and around the world, they say, hey, Donald Trump shut down USAID, except for the 15 key employees they have to have, cut billions of dollars of payments around the world. But a lot of people don't really understand what that really means. So kind of give us a real world assessment of what these cuts are doing around the world.
Well, I guess you can take many different views of that. And I tried to be take an optimistic view of it, and from the standpoint that, the way I understood it in the beginning, for USAID, it was a suspension until the things that were out there could be reviewed. And so I think that when you're trying to determine what is going out and that is not immediately needed or not directly affecting some mass that needs those funds. It's an incumbent that somebody does that and has that oversight. And I don't think there's a couple of things the U.S. government doesn't do very well, and one is make jobs, and one is manage money. But you got to be resilient when you're in business. And in a case of what we were doing in Ukraine, it got paused, and now it's about to go back into full swing. So we had a suspension, and that's challenging from the standpoint that the expense clock never stops. I mean, when you have people that are in hotels and you have food and you have a lot of people in the local level who expect to be paid, those expenses don't stop, but your means to collect payment for those services ceases. So it really presents itself in a lot of challenges, and I expect that's going to be probably the hallmark of what's going on for the next few years, although I think that we're part of the project in Djibouti. So where one place the funds get stopped, another place they're marching on, and we're doing things with the U.S. government in various ways around the globe. But in this particular case in Ukraine, things got paused and for the short term, and now they're being reinstituted, brought back in, and notice to proceed, and that's a good thing. So I look forward to getting the jobs done there that we started. But it's very challenging when you've got people, and then out of the clear blue, they're suspended, and we're not an NGO, and so we're not. We're supposed to get make money on what we do. Doesn't always work out that way, but for the NGOs, I know it's difficult when you have people there out, and they expect. Even an NGO has people on staff that they're paying, and they've got to make those paychecks, and so it interrupts a lot of things that are going on in the world, and interrupts a lot of life.
Well, it's interesting because I think they said that they cut 87% of the funding to projects around the world. And listen, I made it very clear many times in the show that I don't like the fact that the U.S. government has $36 trillion in debt. We need to cut it. But also, as a guy who does work around the world, when you're recruiting people to do stuff, one day, and then the very next day, you can't pay them. It disrupts. But to me, and I like your take on this, okay, so for you're very lucky that you're getting back on track. But it has caused a lot of people to question the U.S. government and whether they can count on the U.S. government. And you're lucky. But listen, I've gotten probably about 30 or 40 phone calls from people because they know I do work in Ukraine saying, hey, what's going on? I'm owed 10 million, I'm owed 5 million, I'm owed this, I'm owed that. And they're not getting the money right now. So, for NGOs, you're right. NGOs live paycheck to paycheck, week to week. Most of them do.
Exactly.
Losing that grant is a huge deal. So do you think, just from what you're seeing, do you think that this has caused any individuals who are non-Americans, they're questioning whether or not they can count on America in the future?
Oh, Dane, I'm sure. I'm absolutely positive that there are people out there and that feel that way and have those thoughts. But I tend to look at things a little bit different. Maybe that's the reason you have me on sometimes. But I think that's generational. I think the people like yourself and myself, and who've been around doing this for a long time, we see it and understand that everything dealing with the government and dealing with not only the United States but other governments, it's cyclical. It's up and down. It has its moments, but as far as discounting us as a worthy partner, or a true partner, or a partner with staying power, I think people of our generation uh, some younger that have done this, have been down this road before. They understand what's going on. And for the younger generation, you know, I remember my days back when, you're an idealist, and one day life slaps you upside the head and you become a realist. And so,
Yeah, that's true. Well, let me ask this question. So I was just in Taiwan before I came here to the Philippines, and had many meetings there about, what's going to happen if China invades, and what's the status of all that, and here in the Philippines, our Secretary of Defense was just here, and we're talking about the strategic defense of the South China Seas and things of this nature. But one of the concerns, yeah, you're right. I mean, just back up. You're right. Cyclical. Donald Trump, in theory, is president for 4 years. Who knows? Maybe he'll try to run for 4 more. Who knows? But unlike many other countries, foreign policy changes every 4 years, 8 years in our country. So all the cuts to USAID and the abolishment of USAID could change in 4 years. Who knows what's going to happen? But the reality is, we are in a state. And tell me what you think about this. We are in a state. To me, we're in a state of war around the world when it comes to authoritarianism. The bad guys, they don't stop. The bad guys, it's like what I was watching some movie the other day. It said you take advantage of the opportunities as soon as they present themselves. So even though you were offline for a short period of time in Ukraine, I feel pretty confident that the bad guys are taking advantage of this moratorium in many ways. And that's hard ground to get back. I mean, would you argue that is the case, that the bad guys are taking advantage of the uncertainty of America's position in certain things around the world?
Dane, the bad guys doze, but they never close. I mean, they are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There are some very clever players out there, and they, it's interesting, some of the things I see in Instagram and different mediums. They're hard at work. They are absolutely hard at work. And I think, some people may look at the hardline view of Trump, but it's like Sean Connery said, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. And it's unfortunate that we live in a world where we have to have a strong military and we have to have strong defense. I think the ideal of exporting democracy has been a failure of this country. And, too many times people don't stop and look at the culture and try to understand the culture, and more focused on regime change. And I think, we've made some big blunders there, but the bad guys never sleep. And they always have their strategy and they're always pursuing it. And you see it, traveling around the world. But now we have a new president, and frankly, you've traveled, I've traveled. I think more people were worried about the administration before Trump being a legitimate player and trustworthy to support them. I see, I've had many conversations, people asking me, and sometimes to the point of my own embarrassment. They never saw that. I was just trying to explain the lack of leadership.
So, well, listen, I agree. There's a leadership vacuum in many ways around the world, and I'm not in any way an apologist for the previous administration. And listen, people know pretty much how I feel about the current president, but it's not a debate about whether he's a good man or a bad man. It is about the role of America, and you're right. I mean, there's two. One thing I don't think that Americans fully understand, and maybe it's just my own hubris or my craziness, is that this whole phrase of soft power. We talk about hard power, military might. We have to have the best military equipment in the world in order to kick someone's butt, that kind of thing. But in places like Africa, like Nigeria and Ghana and South Sudan and also in South America, there's when we give millions of dollars and maybe billions of dollars to help out indigent people or to help, whether it's an AIDS vaccine or whatever the issue may be, things that I may personally not agree with. The reason we're doing that is to build those relationships so that we don't allow China or Russia or Iran or others to come in. Now, with all that gone, with all that soft power gone, that's what concerns me. Yeah, we can debate all day long about the military, the U.S. military, and its, what it's going to do. But do you see, like in Ukraine, where you are, do you see that with America pulling back soft power, that does create an opening for the bad guys around the world?
I think it creates an opening, sure, but many things create openings. But I think it does create an opening. I take a different view, Dane. I don't. I think that when you look at a political figure in Georgia getting $3 or $4 billion for absurdity, that money can be better spent. And I think the thing that we failed at in for the past 50 years when we're handing out funds to USAID is having the regulatory facility in place that we're making sure those monies are being used as they're supposed to be used. And I don't see that money as going away. I see it being more focused. And but if you're going to give away American tax dollars, I'm working every day, and there's money coming out of my check. And I saw a thing the other day is if people had to sit down and write a check out of every paycheck to pay your taxes, you'd be more probably visceral about where that money's going. And so I don't see the money going away. I just see it being better managed, better doled out, and somebody keeping track of how it's being used. Because I think a lot of those funds, when you're paying $1 billion to buy condoms for Hezbollah, I mean, that's pretty nonsensical. And so,
well, by the way, that was proven not to be true. Just want you to know that was proven not to be true.
Well, I think that whether it's true or not, when you look at the billions of dollars that went into Gaza, and they could have built a nice society there. And I'm not here to argue that point, and I don't argue anyway ever. So, but I think that when the soft money retracts, that the heavy players are out there. Who has, Russia doesn't have the money and the wherewithal to do what it used to do, and I think China probably struggles in that regard right now. Their economy is having a tough time, and I go to China quite a bit. Have quite a few relationships there in business, and but sure, when you pull back the soft money, maybe in some places, yeah, it probably hurts, and in other places maybe not so much. But I will say that many times the people who are screaming the loudest are the ones who have been dysfunctional in the way they handle those funds.
No, listen, I agree 100%. I mean, but there is a whole different debate between accountability and whether the funds should be, listen, I agree. Even in Ukraine, billions of dollars have been spent that aren't unaccounted for. Listen, sadly, we have to take a quick break here and then get on to the next discussion here, Keith. But listen, it's always great seeing you, and I really, truly appreciate the fact that you're getting up 3 o'clock in the morning to have this conversation.
It's for you, buddy.
Well, I know. I owe you dearly for this. Anyway, we'll talk soon. Anyway, we'll talk later. Anyway, thanks for. Let's take a quick break for Around the World with Dane Waters, and we'll be back. Thank you.
One of the largest exporters of ivory in the world. Doesn't include real nation. Where your votes will get stolen if you can vote for it at all.